Welcome to the Can Innovate podcast, the first ever podcast designed to showcase Canadian thought leadership. These innovators share industry insights, entrepreneurial best practices, lessons learned, and other tips that we can incorporate right into our lives, our careers, and our businesses. So let's get inspired. Hey innovators, this episode's really interesting. I get to sit down and talk to Michael Gord, who is the founder and CEO of MLG Blockchain. I know it's been a while since I've had a blockchain episode, but it is growing faster each year. I can't believe how many different companies are adopting it in different ways. So we get to chat. So Michael actually shares some really crazy insights about, really how different companies are utilizing blockchain. There's some big names out there that have really adopted it, and lots of government agencies. We talk about different countries that have higher adoption rates and what they've been up to. He actually talks about, a lot about how this cryptocurrency is kind of a new way of raising capital for all those different things. He is such an amazing inspiration and source of information. Like, he is blockchain when I think about him. He also gives some great tips about, how we have to manifest our own thoughts because they do become real. He is an avid reader, and my goodness, he's come up with a list of phenomenal books that we should all learn from. Anyways, take a listen. I can't wait to hear your feedback on this. I'm sure we're going to have more blockchain topics that are going to come down the road from different companies of how they're utilizing it, because it is a trend, or is it something that's sticking around? And Michael and I sit down and we talk about that. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to get stronger. So anyways, take a listen. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Cheers. So we are really lucky. We've got Michael Gord, who is the founder and CEO of MLG Blockchain, an enterprise blockchain and ICO consulting and development firm. Michael has got a really cool background. He was the first enterprise blockchain developer at TD Bank, which is one of the largest Canadian banks out here. He's also the director of the Blockchain Education Network, a robust global network of blockchain enthusiasts, and sits on the board of directors of the Blockchain Association of Canada. And he's also an advisor to an investor in several prominent blockchain ventures. I definitely think Michael knows a thing or two about blockchain. Welcome.
Thanks, Daphne.
So as you know, I've actually become quite the blockchain junkie. In fact, I also got certified in blockchain business professional. It's more about the technology for me than cryptocurrency. So I find this area that you're specializing in really fascinating.
Amazing. Yeah, it's an exciting time.
So let's start at the beginning. So for our listeners out there, what exactly is blockchain and what's all this hype?
Blockchain is basically the new internet. It's a better way of storing information and creating applications. The hype is based around the fact that we are reinventing the current internet, the current financial system, the current government system, supply chain system. Just about every existing industry is being disrupted by blockchains.
Really? Every industry is being hit by blockchain? Like, how are they using it?
It depends on the industry. Financial services for faster, cheaper transactions and microtransactions, supply chains to manage pieces along the supply chain, art and music and arts and journalism to guarantee authenticity. And then tons of new industries are being created using blockchains.
That is amazing. So do you think some of the challenges are about getting into this space for blockchain?
I think the biggest challenge is education and scalability. For education, most people are just not familiar with blockchains. And we saw with the internet, there would be companies like PayPal that were giving people $10 for every account to create adoption and to create a network for PayPal, also for the internet. We're going to be seeing the same things with blockchains and companies essentially giving out value to join their network. And I think that with companies like Telegram and Kik that have 300 million and 200 million people on their platforms already, respectively, I think that as soon as and doing token sales to power portions of their business, I think as soon as Kik and Telegram add in the digital currencies to their platforms, we're going to see huge adoption of hundreds of millions of people, effectively like doubling or tripling or quadrupling the number of cryptocurrency users there are overnight. And then for scalability, our roadblock is that if enterprises started to put on the hundreds of millions of users on top of blockchains today, blockchain systems are not scalable enough in the same way that 20 years ago we could only store like a megabyte of data in a hard drive that was the size of a truck. And today we have supercomputers in our pockets. We're going to see a similar type of exponential growth for storage on blockchains, in my opinion.
That sounds cool. So out of curiosity, have people always say that Bitcoin is blockchain. Is there kind of something that we kind of need to kind of demystify about that?
Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that lives on a blockchain protocol. Bitcoin is one of thousands of cryptocurrencies and one of dozens of protocols. So Bitcoin is the first digital currency and the first to introduce a blockchain as we know today. But there are thousands of digital currencies and dozens of protocols.
That's awesome. So cryptocurrency, are we currently using cryptocurrency? Are end users currently using cryptocurrency and we don't realize that that's what it's being classified as?
I think that still very few users. It's pretty niche to actually use cryptocurrency still in everyday life. I expect that by next year it will become normal too, with games and restaurants and everything starting to accept cryptocurrency. But today, the only cryptocurrency applications that are in production are still very niche.
Yeah, because I see these all these different like kind of cryptocurrency ATM machines in different places around. So I'm like, oh, so it's a lot more, adopted out there than I realize, or I'm just so flabbergasted by it all the time.
Yeah, there's starting to be more and more ATMs. I believe that just about the only currency that has volume from the ATMs, like trading volume on the ATMs, is Bitcoin. So there's not a huge, and that's still not a huge amount of like real world usefulness. It's still probably, I would guess, mostly speculation. The people that are buying and selling Bitcoin, or for industry, for like still stuff like the Silk Road or stuff like that, there's huge use case. But I don't think that most of the people that are using ATMs are using like more niche currencies, and there's still very few applications. There's very few like games or services that actually use digital currencies today. An increasing amount.
But they are increasing, I can imagine. So what are some typical ways that companies have been utilizing the blockchain technology itself?
Most stuff of how enterprises and governments are using it is proof of concepts and pilot applications. But we saw that, for example, the Venezuela government just released a cryptocurrency. So I believe that just about every government is, or I think certainly every government is going to release a government-issued currency to power services in their country. And I know that there's some other countries that are looking at that too. In Canada, the Canadian banks are piloting a settlement network for interbank payments that speeds up the processing time. Walmart is using blockchains to power their supply chain and have reduced the cost of working with their supply chain substantially. And I think that once they bring that into production, it's going to be companies like Walmart that have already a huge supply chain network that bring they bring their entire supply chain onto their blockchain network, basically like forcing their supply chain to work on their blockchain network. That'll quickly lead to adoption throughout the entire supply chain.
That is really cool. So is there a certain industry or country or area that is more advanced in or have a higher adoption rate with the whole blockchain?
Yeah, I think that the cities that have the highest adoption are Seoul and Tokyo right now. In Tokyo, last time I was there, they had billboards up with huge Bitcoin banners, and they had enormous existing businesses that were getting into creating digital currency exchanges, and they have a clear regulatory format for it. Islands like Gibraltar and Malta and Bermuda and Barbados are also have very strong adoption, but it's a lot easier to get strong adoption and virtual complete awareness on an island with thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands instead of millions. But yeah, Seoul and Tokyo, I think, have the highest adoption today. I think that China and the countries that have entirely digital payments, so like Alibaba in China, Paytm in India, but less so in India because there's still a large amount of cash in the economy. But I think that countries that like China that are used to the QR code payments and used to payments on networks like WeChat, I think have the strongest adoption possibilities because to switch to transacting with digital currencies is super simple. It's just WeChat and the companies and people that are already using QR codes and digital dollars for payments will be super simple. Whereas in North America, where we still are predominantly a cash-based economy, cash or credit, it'll be a lot more of a culture shock for people to start paying with QR codes.
So are there lots of legal implications or things to consider from a legal perspective?
Yeah, a huge amount. So traditionally, it was only really banks that had to care about knowing your customer for doing money processing. Today, with token sales, there's people all over the world that are needing to know their customer. So KYC is a very big part of token sales and the blockchain industry. In addition to that, you're not just knowing your customer and raising capital in your country. You're raising capital potentially from people in hundreds of countries. So you touch on the securities and regulations across every jurisdiction that you touch, potentially in the hundreds from the very beginning. So yeah, legals are a very necessary thing to be considering while working with blockchains. Yeah,
I was reading the paper about all these ICOs, and for listeners out there, ICOs refers to initial coin offerings. Which is regarding that cryptocurrency. I hear that there's quite a few different ICO scams out there. Are there things that we as consumers should be a bit more aware of?
I think that there are scams everywhere. I think that cryptocurrencies represent and ICOs represent a fundamentally better way of raising capital. I think that everyone should be able to raise capital from a global group of investors rather than being forced to raise capital exclusively locally, which is fine for us in Toronto because there's a pretty good venture community. But if you're trying to start a business from a place without a strong venture capital community, then it's going to be impossible to scale up, even if you've got a great product or a great service or a great brand. But I think that companies that are just starting, that are raising their Series A, Series B, Series C in a token sale before they've proven their concept is not a good idea because they haven't proved their concept yet. I think that the consumers and investors that are investing into these companies that are raising $20, $30 million, $50 million before they prove their concepts should look more into the company and make sure that they're going to be able to hit on their roadmap. So I think that we're starting to see a lot more realistic valuations from the token sales that are happening, and companies are raising a more appropriate amount, and companies are only raising an amount with a product already in market and with the community starting to see traction. So I think that as the world sees more token sales, I think that we're going to start to see more realistic valuations. I think that instead of giving a company $20 million to start, even if it's the best idea in the world, it'll be broken up based on hitting milestones. So it'll be broken up with still a seed and a Series A and a Series B. But yeah, I think that the investors in the world should consider tokens and blockchain companies the same as investors do with traditional equities, and just see that the company is hitting on their roadmap and that their story is growing and that the valuation is proper.
So that's really cool. So I didn't realize that ICOs is a new way of kind of raising capital, and in addition to all the VCs and other formats, but ICOs is a great way to also raise some capital for funding startups.
Yeah, I think it represents a fundamentally better way of raising capital because it allows you to raise capital from a global audience. It democratizes access to investment classes. So traditionally it would be impossible for someone outside of New York or a very elite group of real estate investors to invest into New York City real estate or New York City towers. Traditionally, it would have been just about impossible for anyone outside of elite venture capitalists in Silicon Valley to be able to invest into the Silicon Valley startup asset class. So I think it's a fundamentally better way of and more democratic way of raising capital. It allows you to maintain more control. It allows you to build in new ways of rewarding the earliest adopters of your community. There's a lot of reasons to raise capital through a token sale than through traditional capital markets.
So this is cool. So our prediction is, what is it? Blockchains are going to stay and continue to grow, or is it just a kind of a phase and a fad?
Definitely going to stick around and continue to grow.
Wow. So now when we talk about people that, want to get in the blockchain area, are there kind of some key critical skills that, to get into this kind of growing area?
I think every skill, any person could find a way to add value in the blockchain industry. The entire world is being rewritten and rebuilt on blockchains to be decentralized. So anything that someone does could be put on blockchains and made simpler, made faster, made more democratic.
So for those that want to get do they need like hands-on experience to get into the blockchain? So do you have any tips of how to get that type of experience?
You can get into blockchains with any skills, whether you're if you're a developer, then of course you can build applications or you can collaborate on open source code. If you're an entrepreneur, there's every industry in the world is being rewritten on blockchains. If you're into finance, I think that blockchains figuring out how businesses do work with, or accounting, figuring out how businesses operate and how you account for companies that are operating with traditional fiat currency as well as digital currencies. Super innovative. If you're an investor, then tons of investment opportunities. If you're a designer, then you can design something that's being put on a blockchain. If you're an artist, then you can tokenize your art, put it on blockchains. If you're in politics, then you can figure out how to create democracy on blockchain and put voting on blockchain. If you're working supply chains, then you can put your supply chain on the blockchain. I could continue. Just any industry could add value working with blockchains.
So how did MLG Blockchain, your company, come about? How did that idea kind of inspire you to create this?
I recognize that I believe that digital currencies and blockchains represent the most exciting opportunity in the history of the world. And I wanted to tell all my friends about it, and I wanted to help people figure out what blockchains were, how to build blockchains to power portions of their business, and ultimately how to create a global movement that can take blockchains mainstream.
And that you have done, because I believe that your company is everywhere, right? In North America, Europe, Asia.
We've got operations globally, yeah.
That has got to be the coolest feeling in the world that you started, a part of a major movement that's going to totally revolutionize a lot of things. So congratulations to you. Has there been any kind of key lessons learned or aha moments that in setting up this venture?
Key lessons, I think a good one for life is to consider your thoughts. Thoughts are real. What you think about is bound to happen. What you believe will happen is probably going to happen. And I like the idea of Talib Kweli, the author of the Black Swan. I think that that's relevant today because you could think that the markets are booming. You could think that the markets are going to continue to be booming, and then markets crash. And so to consider black swans and to not always think that to things that you can't impact, to be considerate of that.
Is Black Swan the book, the one that really resonated with you, or is there another book that's really resonated with you?
There's lots of books that have resonated with me more than the Black Swan. I think the Black Swan is just relevant today, given the ups and downs in the market and the unexpectedness of that.
So I love learning from smart people. So let me know, what kind of other books do you think that really have kind of like wowed you?
I think Think and Grow Rich is my favorite. It's about growing rich mentally. Idea is if you grow rich mentally, you can do whatever you want. Good to Great is really good. It's about the difference between a good leader and a great leader is in the ability for a great leader to inspire the people around them to be great, and a good leader being able to lead effectively. But without them there, the group has not developed leadership skills internally. And then Outliers is really good, about the fact that outliers are not random often, and that it's not impossible to be an outlier, that it's worth doing if it's possible. Tipping Point's really good. Crossing the Chasm, 0 to 1. I read a lot.
I was going to say, you're definitely an avid book reader. Who knew? That's fantastic. So when do you find time to kind of balance it all out? Like, that's craziness. So do you actually have a place where you kind of gravitate when you're not traveling from country to country to country? Like, do you have a favorite restaurant or a place or a festival in Canada?
Osheaga is a fun festival. I used to live in Montreal, so I used to go every year. It's my favorite festival that I've been. Restaurant, I'd say Yasu's is my favorite restaurant in Toronto. Big sushi fan.
Nice.
How about you?
Oh, I've got so many. Right now I'm kind of addicted to this place called Rickshaw. It's an Indian fusion place, but it's an Indian fusion with everything. So each dish has got a different fusion, and every time I go there, I'm like, I actually basically starve myself all day just so I can gorge. There's just so many great places to eat. So I'm always looking for really fun places to check out.
Amazing.
So finally, Michael, you're absolute amazing that you're doing all these phenomenal things. You're a wealth of knowledge. I'm definitely guessing a lot of our listeners are going to want to connect with you. How can they do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Telegram. LinkedIn is Michael Gord. Twitter is Big Gord. Telegram is M Gord.
Awesome. I will put that all in the show notes, so it can just be a click of the button, and they'll be connecting right to you right off the bat.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. This has been really valuable.
Cheers, Sapna. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And next week, I got another really fun episode. You'll be surprised at the topics we're going to cover. But anyways, in the meantime, you don't have to wait till next week to connect with us. You can connect with us always on all the different social media links. You can even send us a review. That's another great place to give feedback. And of course, our new newsletter that has tons of new golden nuggets and of course, discounts galore. Actually, our tools section of the website also have it. And please feel free to nominate another innovator out there. And I can't wait to talk to you next week.